It was something we did a long time ago, and yet in a way, it seems like it was just yesterday. It was something that's very Canadian. One of the hardest things to deal with when Duchenne enters your life comes up very early in this unexpected journey you've just begun. And it comes at a time when you're least prepared to deal with it, sharing the news with others. You don't know how to tell your best friends what's happened, and your best friends don't know how to ask you what's happened. But everyone knows something's not right here. In an instant, your entire world has changed, and you find yourself coming to grips with just how intense the feeling of being alone can really be. I can tell you in all honesty that first you cry, and that's okay. I hope this video will serve as a start point where you can reach out to your friends to give them some understanding of what's happened. And your friends will be able to let you know that they'll be there for you and your family. Looking back, the first thing I needed to determine was what I did know and what I did not know. And the first bit of hope came when I learned that the gene that causes Duchenne muscular dystrophy had been discovered in recent years by Ottawa's Dr. Ron Wharton.
Duchenne muscular dystrophy is really quite insidious. It's not apparent at birth. Children with the disease are born, appear quite normal. The problem in Duchenne muscular dystrophy is that the muscles deteriorate over time. The reason for that is that the muscles really do fall apart. They simply disintegrate and are replaced by fat and connective tissue so that they effectively have no muscle power after a while.
The youngster at the heart of our story was our middle son, Jesse. I think I'd be safe in saying that at the time of diagnosis, Jesse was a lot like the little boy you know. Just a kid looking forward to life and all that's waiting ahead. Jesse was the quiet little kid in our family, and he was the thinker. When it comes to research, there weren't very many roads to go down in those days. As parents, we were never going to be risk takers with our children's health. And we looked very carefully into every avenue that held a realistic possibility. When Jesse was 11 years old and losing his ability to walk, we took part in an experimental treatment in Memphis, Tennessee. Jesse received stem cells donated by his older brother, Tyler. The hope was that Tyler's healthy cells would pass their genetic blueprint to the recipient cells, allowing them to produce dystrophin, the critical protein that Duchenne youngsters are missing. If there's one thing that Jesse always had, it was an upbeat feeling of confidence.
Goodbye, old life.
Jesse's mom, who was always very cautious, felt that at this time, this was the right thing to do.
Here's a chance, and I think we should take it because it's better than any other chance we have. And I have some confidence that it will work.
In the back of my mind, I was beginning to view science and the Duchenne fight in the bigger picture. While I wanted very much for this experimental procedure to work, I was beginning to see that the road ahead was going to be a long one, and my commitment to staying on that road was growing. Unfortunately, in the 9 months between the injections and his follow-up visit, Jesse had lost his ability to walk unaided. Early on, there were some encouraging signs, but ultimately, the cell therapy did not have the desired result. In looking back on this experimental treatment, I feel that if we hadn't taken this opportunity, which was all there was, then maybe the whole field of Duchenne research may have lain dormant for an even longer period of time. So in retrospect, it was an extraordinarily valuable experiment that produced hope, hope that has taken time to be fulfilled. While this part of our story was unfolding, I was quickly learning about research and just how expensive it can be. I was beginning to see that research in Duchenne needed a bold new initiative. And it's rather ironic, but when Jesse was beginning to lose his ability to walk, I was walking more and more. I was needed, and I wanted to be close to home. Now I was beginning to focus on how to drive research further than it had ever gone before. One day when I was out for a walk, the thought I had been nurturing started to take shape. I asked myself if we could ever turn all this walking into something. It was as simple as that. And that's when the idea of a road journey targeted at funding research was moved onto the drawing board. This was a bold venture I was planning. I was almost 50 years old, and my plan to push our son Jesse 3,300 kilometers across Ontario in his wheelchair was not going to be easy. I knew there was a possibility that I might not be able to complete the job, but I was thinking that I could probably forgive myself if I was not able to complete the job, but I could not forgive myself if I didn't go out and try. The person who held the key to whether this was going to happen was Jesse, and typical of a teenager, he needed some time to think about this.
I thought it was a bit crazy when I first heard it, but I think I always understood that my parents had been able to help me out in the past and that they certainly were trying to make a difference. There were hesitations, but I think they were outweighed by the positive aspects that could become of it.
By the early spring of 1995, the plan was in place. The route had been determined, and on a snowy morning in May, we made our start at the Ontario-Manitoba border. The journey was underway. In the early days on the road, we were very much on our own, and this gave us time to fine-tune our daily routine as the Trans-Canada Highway twisted through the rock cuts of northern Ontario with millions of trees and very few people. This is where your character gets defined, and this is where Jesse and I locked in our determination to make a difference. Day after day, we pushed on, and slowly people began to take notice. And as Jesse remembered, it was small-town Ontario that really got us started.
The smaller the town, the more generous they were. They seemed to, maybe they didn't have as much money as people down in the southern part of Ontario, but they gave everything they could, and they were just delighted to be able to do that.
As the intense heat of that summer continued to build, so too did the stories of people coming to the side of the road to donate to what people were now calling Jesse's Journey. One by one, the days rolled by, and every day on the road brought a new story that inspired us to keep going. After more than 2 months on the road, we reached Huntsville, Ontario, the halfway mark. Jesse was now very much in the spotlight, and the provincial police were constantly with us as people were stopping along the highway to donate. With the heat and the stress building every day, I was keeping a close watch on Jesse, as his health and safety were my #1 concern. Sean Bagshaw, a young kinesiology student who went on to become a doctor, was Jesse's helper when we were on the road, and the two of them bonded like brothers. As the weeks turned into months, we made our way around the top of Lake Superior and on to Sault Ste. Marie and Sudbury before heading south and pushing into southern Ontario, where more and more people were waiting. And the stories kept coming, and so did the emotion that came with them. There was a lady who came to the roadside to make a donation in honor of the 2 sons she had lost to Duchenne. These were the moments that rocked me the most and made me so proud of people. There was no media fanfare and no ceremony on the steps of City Hall with cameras and microphones. She just came to the side of the road to quietly show her support for Jesse and all those boys who are just like him. After almost 100 days on the road in our journey targeted at raising funds for research and increasing the awareness of a disease that few people had ever heard of, we reached London, and for a few hours, we were home. My favorite picture of our time on the road was taken on a summer evening in London when I knew that Jesse had captured the hearts of the people of Ontario. His upbeat message was resonating with everyone.
Jesus in the near future, so we're just out here to try our best to get to Ottawa and raise $1 million for research.
Even though Jesse always had a smile for people, that night in the park when he leaned over to ask me when we would be leaving for home, I was concerned that he was beginning to tire from his time on the road and all the attention. But still, he carried on. The relentless heat and humidity had made the summer the hottest on record as we pushed on with our sights set on Ottawa. At the Sky Dome in Toronto, Jesse's story of courage and determination flashed on the Jumbotron as we made our way around the bases, and Jesse waved his Canadian flag. As a dad, I was very proud of what my son was accomplishing. But he's a hard worker, he's a tireless worker. He's up and ready every morning, and so if he's ready to go, I certainly don't have any excuse, and he keeps us all going. He's a great kid. The whirlwind tour through Toronto concluded with Jesse being invited to the Hockey Hall of Fame for an up-close look at the Stanley Cup. Leaving Toronto, we were now in our 5th month on the road, and Jesse's message had never wavered.
I know I'm doing something good, so I just keep going because I know I'm doing it for somebody else.
Pushing on from Toronto, it seemed like every day life on the road was a busy experience, and Jesse did his very best to keep things in balance.
Tonight I like to take it easy and do nothing, and that's the only free time I have, so.
Has this been harder physically than you thought it was going to be at the beginning?
Well, I knew that up north it wasn't going to be as hard, but I knew that as we got down further it was going to get harder, and it's true.
Everywhere we went, people wanted to reach out to Jesse to shake hands with the young boy who wanted to make a difference. Every day there were crowds of people. Time on the road became a blur of homemade signs, balloons and microphones and cameras, applause and flashing lights, kids and their moms and dads along the roadside, and endless calls of encouragement and cheering for Jesse, who knew he was doing the right thing.
I certainly do feel good that I've helped other people, because some people are less fortunate than others, and those people who are less fortunate will have a chance.
At the end of one of our days on the road, I tried to capture in my mind just what Jesse had been doing and what this was going to mean in the future.
I'm extremely proud of him because, you know, I suppose in reality we could almost say that, I hate to believe this, but sometimes I've had geneticists explain enough to me that I understand that maybe the answers we're looking for won't come in Jesse's lifetime, but he's just doing a really great job for all those other kids.
The mornings in eastern Ontario were now cool and crisp as we pushed on toward Ottawa. Fall was just around the corner. By the time we reached Ottawa, Jesse's journey was well known, and people were waiting along the road to cheer Jesse on and to make a donation. Jesse was recognized in the House of Commons as members from all parties stood and applauded in recognizing his achievement. Even Canada's Prime Minister, Jean Chrétien, wanted to take part in Jesse's journey.
So now we'll have a big run in the corridor, okay?
In Ottawa, there was just one more appearance to make at Centre Ice, as the Toronto Maple Leafs were also on the road playing the Ottawa Senators. And then we were on to the final day.
Getting wet, 1-1.
There was a party atmosphere along the streets in Ottawa as I pushed Jesse up the hill toward the Parliament buildings. I leaned over and whispered to him that I thought this might be the last hill for us to climb together. Our journey was now just minutes from the official finish line on the Alexandra Bridge, linking Ontario and Quebec.
Done a great job, honey.
And just like that, the banner being held by the RCMP officers was right in front of us. This was the finish line for an amazing effort put in by a boy who had given all of us a message about courage and looking to the future.
That guy in there. Let him in there.
Nice work, buddy.
Thanks.
I love you.
There. Oh, we made it.
In the years that followed the Cross Ontario journey, there were more appearances to make. All of these events brought a heightened awareness of Duchenne muscular dystrophy, the value of research, and the need to fight for our boys. From dropping the puck on opening night at Maple Leaf Gardens, to planting a tree with Her Majesty the Queen, to receiving the Order of Ontario, Jesse always carried the message that real leaders don't do what they do for honors, but rather because it's the right thing to do for other people. 3 years after our crossing of Ontario, my journey continued, but it was that time on the road as a father and son together on our original project that keeps Jesse always beside me. Jesse didn't live to see the Jesse Davidson Foundation grow to become Defeat Duchenne Canada, uniting families from across Canada and around the world and becoming Canada's leader in funding research. What Jesse did one remarkable summer left people with a message about hope and promise for the future. And with that in mind, Jesse's message still rings true today.
In 1998, John Davidson, my dad, walked across Canada at the age of 52. In 1995, he pushed me across Ontario in my wheelchair to raise money for research. That's over 10 million steps. I'm Jesse Davidson from Jesse's Journey, and I have Duchenne muscular dystrophy, a disease for which there is no cure. Like many others living with this illness, my hope for the future is research. Many families are living with the pain of watching a loved one suffer with MD. Many more will be diagnosed before we find a cure. But together, we can make a difference if you help. Please join me in Jesse's Journey to fund research on the road to a cure. Visit jessesjourney.com because it's your journey too.